There are people who seem to live outside the common rhythm of the world. While everyone else rushes, they walk. While most despair before the clock, they seem to converse with time, as if there were a silent agreement between them and the universe. They are the ones who build in silence, who don't need to shout what they are doing because they have already understood something that most ignore. Haste has never built anything that lasts. Perhaps there is, in fact, an invisible law governing the steps of these people, force that organizes chaos when the mind finds its center. Carl Jung said that the unconscious governs the destiny of those who refuse to acknowledge it. This phrase sounds simple, but it's devastating when truly understood, because it means that if you don't become aware of your own mind, it works against you. It's as if within each person there exists a secret mechanism that decides the course of life, and while some learn to operate it, others are crushed by it. The difference between these two paths begins at the point that few have the courage to look at within themselves. Think for a moment. How many people do you know who live in a constant race but never get anywhere? They wake up early, fill obligations, strive, produce, resolve emergencies, but at the end of the day, they feel the same emptiness as always. They sleep exhausted, wake up tired, and life seems to spin in a cycle that consumes everything: time, energy, dreams. It's as if the whole world is programmed for movement, but not for purpose. The feeling is of being alive, not awake. However, there is a rare type of person who follows a different, not because they are more intelligent or privileged, as they have discovered something that cannot be taught in school, nor learned through formulas for success. They have discovered that the mind can be a field of construction or destruction. While some struggle to survive, these few build in silence, driven by a force that does not depend on physical effort, but on inner clarity. They have learned to direct their own energy, transform thought into structure, chaos into order. The world calls it luck, but luck is simply the name we give to the discipline of those who think before acting. Jung called this process individuation, the movement of uniting what is scattered within us, of giving form to what is chaotic, of transforming the unconscious into an ally. Most people live fragmented, lost in distractions and fleeting desires, while a select few decide to stop, observe, and build something alive from their own being. This something is not just a project, a business, or an idea. It is a reflection of their own awakened consciousness. And here lies the crucial point. Don't build something that works for you. Your own body pays the price. Most people believe that life is a race and that whoever runs the most wins. But what happens when exhaustion arrives before the finish line? How many are running so much that they no longer know why? There is a type of fatigue that doesn't come from the body, it comes from the soul. It's the exhaustion of those who live trying to compensate movement for a lack of meaning. Time passes. With it, strength, hope, sparkle in our eyes. Bills pile up, days repeat themselves, and everything that was once a dream becomes mere survival. The body resists, but the mind begs for a break. And it is at this point that the difference between effort and awareness is revealed, as those who act unconsciously waste energy fighting against their own current. Those who awaken learn to row with the flow of life and not against it. Jung believed that the unconscious is a living, autonomous force that reacts to our attitudes. When we ignore it, it creates resistance. When we listen to it, it transforms into direction. That's why some people seem guided by a kind of synchronicity. Opportunities arise. Paths open up. The right ideas appear at the right time. Not magic, ignorance. When the mind is aligned with what is true, the external world begins to respond. But almost no one notices this, because almost no one stops. Silence is frightening. Thinking hurts. Observing requires courage. And the human mind has learned to run away from what confronts it. We prefer to fill the void with tasks, noises, distractions. It's easier to believe that the next effort will compensate for the last failure than to admit that perhaps the problem lies. Have you ever noticed how people pride themselves on being busy? I haven't stopped for a second today, they say with a tired smile, as if exhaustion were synonymous with importance. And the more they do, the less they feel they are progressing. It's a race without a finish line, a hypnotic dance where everyone moves but no one progresses. Because we confuse busyness with purpose. We believe that movement is synonymous with growth. But if the movement is circular, it leads nowhere. The truth is that effort without awareness becomes imprisonment. Working harder isn't the answer. Thinking better is. The mind is the most powerful tool that exists, but you treat it as such. Most use it only to react to problems, messages, fears. You use it to create. Jung said that everything you don't make conscious returns as destiny. Explains why so many people live the cycles. Same mistakes, same relationships, same pains, only with new names and faces. Not bad luck, it's unconscious repetition. And here arises the question that separates the exhausted from the conscious. What is your effort building? Think about it calmly. All your time, your energy, your decisions, what are they fueling? Are you creating something that grows even when you stop? Or just keeping a wheel turning? Power runs out? because that's the difference between someone who just works and someone who truly builds. True power lies not in continuous effort, but in the right direction. A small movement made consciously is worth more than 1,000 automatic gestures. When you become aware of what you're doing and why, time changes its texture. It ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally. Every action begins to have weight, intention, and consequence. Perhaps the greatest deception of our time is believing that success comes from doing more, when, in fact, it is born from thinking differently. Haste is the mask of fear. Fear of falling behind, fear of not being enough, fear of facing one's own emptiness. That's why we run. We run to avoid healing. We run to avoid thinking. We run to avoid stopping. But the destiny of those who run without direction is always the same: exhaustion. There is something profoundly liberating about stopping and observing your own mind. At first, the silence is unsettling. The mind screams, begs for noise, demands distraction. But after a while, something reveals itself, a kind of clarity that cannot be found in any course, nor in any lecture. It is the realization that everything you have always sought outside has always been within, waiting for you to slow down enough to. This is where the real building begins, not in effort, but in presence, not in haste, but in clarity. When Jung spoke about knowing the unconscious, he wasn't referring to a mystical concept, but to a practical act of life. Knowing yourself means understanding what motivates you, what blocks you, what sabotages you. It's about looking at your own patterns, consciously deciding not to repeat them. It's about building an internal structure capable of supporting what you want to manifest in the world. The body performs the actions, but it is the mind that builds. And if the mind lacks direction, the body gets lost. Therefore, those who live in peace with time are not stronger nor faster. They are more conscious. They have learned to make silence a tool. They have learned to wait, to observe, plan. And while the world rushes by in despair, they build in silence, because they know that time rewards those who plant with patience. Ultimately, the secret lies not in doing more, but in understanding the reason behind. The difference between effort and achievement lies in the mindset that sustains it. While some spend their lives fighting against the clock, others discover how to make the clock work for them. And it is at this point that when you awaken to this, you realize that the missing strength was never outside. It's always in how you think, feel, and choose. Those who walk in peace with their own time do not live slower. They have simply stopped fighting against the flow of their own minds. And that's exactly where the transformation begins. Transition, hook for part 2. Because when you understand how time really works, you discover that the greatest enemy has never been a lack of hours, been a lack of awareness. There's a scene that repeats itself every day, in millions of places, almost always in the same way. An alarm clock rings before a tired hand turns it off. The body gets up, the mind is still far away, and the day begins on autopilot. Coffee is drunk without taste. Messages already demand answers. The mind jumps from task to task without ever settling on it. Traffic swallows time. Work swallows energy. And inner silence is replaced by noise, deadlines, goals, demands, comparisons. When night falls, the body is exhausted, but the mind still races, as if there were something unfinished, something urgent that needs to be done. Next day, it all starts again. Most people call this routine. Jung would call it psychic imprisonment, a state in which consciousness ceases to command life, and the unconscious, with its old patterns and fears, takes control. It's as if the person is alive, but sleeping with their eyes open. The modern world applauds those who strive, but rarely questions whether that effort has direction. The result is a multitude of exhausted people who confuse movement with progress and call survival. Have you ever wondered how many of your decisions are truly your own? How many times have you responded to something without simply because? How many times has the fear of losing made you accept what you didn't want? It is in these small concessions that the unconscious governs, silent, invisible. And the more you repeat a behavior unconsciously, the stronger it becomes. Imagine someone who spends years working at the same company, keeping the same hours, repeating the same tasks, believing that this will lead to security. They don't realize they are merely trading time for apparent tranquility, while their body deteriorates and the soul cries out for meaning. Each year, the feeling of control diminishes and the fear of change grows. They are not trapped in a job. They are trapped in an unconscious idea of stability. And this idea imprisons them more than any contract. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, call it fate. And that's exactly what happens. People believe that certain things are what they are, when in reality, they are just reflections of thoughts that have never been questioned. It's more comfortable to blame fate than to look in the mirror and admit, I built this myself. There is something tragic and beautiful in this. Tragic, because it reveals how much energy we waste in the wrong directions. Beautiful, because it shows that we can change everything, as long as we have the courage to look in. But looking inward frightens us most. It is there where silence dwells, where the ego no longer rules. It is there that fears, contradictions, truths would reside. Jung called this the encounter with the shadow, the part of ourselves we hide for fear of seeing who we truly are. And perhaps that is why the modern world makes so much noise. Noise prevents us from hearing our own unconscious asking to recognize. There are people who spend their lives running away from their own minds, change cities, jobs, relationships, believing that the problem lies inside themselves. But in every new landscape, the same pattern returns, the same conflicts, the same feelings, just with new names. It's the unconscious asking for attention, and as long as it's not heard, it repeats itself. Think of that person who constantly complains about not having enough time, but spends hours scrolling. Or that professional who works day and night, but never feels the effort was worth it. Or that young person who constantly seeks distraction because they fear the emptiness of silence. They all have something in common, a fear of stopping. Stopping is dangerous, because the moment they stop, the mirror appears. And in the reflection, they see the truth they avoid, that haste is not a sign of progress, escape. The world sells haste as a virtue. Productivity has become a kind of modern religion. Rest seems like a sin. People talk about focus, but they don't know what they want. They talk about success, but they don't define what that means. When they achieve something, they already feel the emptiness demanding the next goal. Because the unconscious, unsatisfied, hungry. It doesn't want more things. It wants meaning. There comes a moment when the soul begins to resist. The body continues on autopilot, but something inside begins to whisper, "This is not enough. This is the beginning of consciousness." Whoever listens to this call discovers something that changes. The problem was never the effort, absence of purpose. Jung believed that individuation, process of becoming who you are, begins when we stop reacting and start creating. When we stop acting as victims of fate and assume the role of architects of our own lives. But this process requires something rare: pause. Thinking requires stopping. Stopping requires courage. A woman once told me, "I don't remember the last time I did something without rushing." She spoke as if confessing a sin. She spent years working, taking care of the house, children, the family, until she realized she had lost herself within her own routine. She wasn't unhappy, she just didn't feel alone. One day, alone in her car, in the middle of traffic, she started crying without knowing why. It wasn't sadness, it was her unconscious finally asking for space. This moment, however painful it may seem, is sacred. Is the point at which consciousness awakens, when the pain of continuing to sleep becomes greater than the fear of waking up. But most ignore this call. Instead of listening, they turn on the radio, open their cell phones, distract their minds. Because thinking is dangerous. Thinking can change everything, and change requires responsibility. Jung said that every human being carries within themselves potential to become whole, but most choose to remain divided. Because integration is hard work. It's easier to go with the flow than to become the author of one's own story. But those who live in the flow end up being taken where they didn't want to go. The world is full of people who believe they are fighting for the future, when in reality, they are only repeating the past. Every time they act without thinking, they strengthen old beliefs. Every time they say that's just how it is, they reinforce the walls of their own prison. And yet, a moment of clarity would be enough to start changing everything. It would only take asking, "Where is this leading me?" This simple question, asked honestly, is the beginning of an internal revolution, because it exposes what is hidden. It shows how much of our lives is spent on tasks that don't move us anywhere. There's a symbolic scene that Jung liked to use, that of the lost traveler. He walks for hours through a forest believing he's near the exit, but upon climbing a rock and looking down, realizes he's been walking in circles the whole time. The same thing happens to us. We work, we run, produce, but unconsciously we go around in circles within our until at some point, something inside breaks the pattern. Loss, a failure. And that's when the mind has the chance to see from above and understand that the path is not forward, it's inward. What differentiates those who awaken from those who fall asleep is simple. The former accepts facing their own emptiness. They understand that discomfort is the beginning of creation, that doubt is the space where the new is born, that silence, however uncomfortable it may be, a fertile ground for transformation. The unconscious doesn't want to punish you, it wants to teach you. It only becomes an enemy when it's ignored. But when you listen to it, it transforms into a map. It begins to show you, through repetitions and emotions, everything that still needs to be integrated. And it is at this point that something inside you begins to change. Noise loses its power. Urgent needs cease to control you. The same tasks continue, but the perspective is different. Because now there is awareness. Where there is awareness, there is power. The world will tell you to run, but you will learn to walk. The world will tell you to react, but you will learn to think. And time, which once seemed like your enemy, will begin to serve you. The difference between blind effort and conscious construction lies in simple gesture. Stop before acting. Think before moving. feel before deciding. And it is precisely in this moment of pause that the invisible begins to work in your favor. When the body is silent and the mind awakens, destiny changes direction. That's exactly where the turning point begins. There is a moment, almost imperceptible, when something within us decides to change. Sometimes it happens silently, without announcement, other times it comes with the weight of a collapse, stifled cry, or exhaustion so profound that there is no longer the strength to continue in the same way. This is the turning point, the place where the old way of existing begins to crumble and the new one is not yet formed. Jung said that every process of transformation is born from the confrontation between the conscious and the unconscious. In this clash, something greater emerges. It is in this space between what we were and what we do not yet know ourselves to be that life begins to reorganize itself from within. When you stop just working and start to think regarding what your work is building, the energy changes its nature. It is no longer brute force. It is creative force. Effort ceases to be reaction and becomes construction. And this difference changes everything. Because the world rewards those who produce, but only recognizes those who create. To produce is to repeat the known. Create is to forge a path in the unknown. Most people fear the unknown, and therefore cling to routine as if it were an anchor, when in reality, it is the weight that prevents the ship from setting sail. But what if the true work of life isn't about surviving, but about making the invisible real? What if the purpose isn't to do more, but to do it with more awareness? The energy that springs from the unconscious is raw, powerful, chaotic. When it's not directed, it manifests as tiredness, anxiety, or repetition. But when it's guided by consciousness, it transforms into autonomous creation, an idea, project, work, system, something that continues to exist even when you stop. Some call it a legacy, but it's deeper than that. It's as if a part of your psyche comes to life outside of you. Jung called this living creation, something born from the union of reason and soul. The artist feels this when a work surpasses them. The entrepreneur feels it when a project begins to fruit on its own. The thinker feels it when an idea begins to live in the mind of others. At that moment, the work ceases to be merely physical and becomes symbolic, a visible reflection, organized unconsciously. You ever had that feeling that something moves on its own, as if the universe were subtly cooperating? That the right idea appears at the exact moment, or that the right people show up effortlessly? It's not coincidence, coherence. When you align what you think, feel, and do, the world responds. Not luck. It's the physics of the mind. Everything in harmony creates a field. Everything out of alignment generates noise. But there is a danger in this discovery, the ego. When the ego tries to control the creative process, it stifles the life that is. The ego wants recognition, it wants haste, it exalts. Consciousness wants meaning, and it is in this conflict that many get lost. They create something powerful, but then transform it into a prison. A company born from freedom becomes routine. A dream born from the heart becomes a burden. Creation only remains alive when you allow it to follow its own course. How many times have you destroyed something good by trying too hard to control it? How many times has anxiety about results killed the joy of creating? The turning point begins when you understand that true power lies not in dominating what you build, but in collaborating with what is born. A conscious creator doesn't impose, he guides. He understands that his mind is a fertile field and that each idea is a seed. Some flourish quickly, others need higher seasons of silence. But all germinate, provided attention nourishes them. Jung said that all repressed psychic energy returns in a destructive way. That's why those who don't create repeat. Those who don't express themselves get sick. Creativity is not a gift restricted to artists. It's a human need. Every repressed thought, every ignored emotion, every postponed dream accumulates in the shadow. And if it doesn't find expression, it finds escape. That's why so many people try to anesthetize life with distractions, food, consumption, overwork, instant gratification, all to avoid hearing what the unconscious is trying to say. But what happens when you finally listen? When you decide to channel the energy instead of fighting it? Chaos transforms into direction. Confusion becomes vision. Doubt turns into a plan. It's almost magical to see the energy that once exhausted you become fuel for something greater. It's at this point that the effort stops hurting. The work begins to flow. Time seems to cooperate because the mind is aligned with purpose. Have you ever noticed that when you do something with purpose, tiredness takes on a different flavor? The body may wear out, the spirit is renewed. It's as if exhaustion is replaced by meaning. Because effort, when it has a purpose, doesn't hurt. Only the waste hurts. And perhaps this is the most transformative revelation. Effort is not the enemy. Effort without direction, yes. When you know where you're going, the weight becomes training. The obstacle becomes a tool. Each challenge begins to seem like part of the plan, not a punishment of chance. But how do you find that direction? It doesn't come from the outside world, nor from others, nor from success manuals. It is born from silence, the same silence that most people run. When you observe your own mind calmly, without judgment, it begins to reveal what really. The right ideas don't appear in the noise, but in the pauses. It is in the void that the unconscious speaks clearly. Why are we so afraid of silence? Perhaps because it brings us back to the truth, and the truth, when it arrives, dismantles matter. It shows that much of what we call necessity is merely habit, that much of what we call progress is just disguised fear. The real turning point doesn't happen when the world changes, but when you change the way you think about the world. The external is merely a reflection. When the mind finds clarity, the rest reorganizes itself. Decisions become easier, paths clearer. What once seemed impossible begins to seem natural. And destiny ceases to be a force that pushes. It becomes a road that responds. At that moment, a new kind of confidence is born. It's not arrogance nor blind optimism, a silent serenity, the certainty that you can build something that lives beyond you. System, art, an idea that continues, that grows, that breathes on its own. And that's when the awakened mind understands. It's not about fighting against time, but about making time work with you. Autonomous creation is proof that consciousness can overcome repetition. It is the symbol of a mind that doesn't react. And whoever creates, even in silence, has already begun to change the world. But here, an inevitable question arises. What within you still insists on repeating the old pattern? What part of your life continues to be fueled by the unconscious, without you realizing it? This question isn't comfortable, but it's necessary, because all true change begins with discomfort. It's the friction that ignites the spark. Turning point is not an external event. It's the moment when you, tired of going in circles, finally decide to think before you act. It's when you understand that the power to transform your destiny lies not in effort, but in the consciousness and from there, the impossible begins. There comes a point when life seems to demand explanations. It's not an external demand, but a kind of silent discomfort that arises when you realize that your effort no longer yields the same results. It's as if everything that once made sense begins to fade. Work loses its luster, goals seem mechanical, and even achievements bring more relief than joy. Jung called this inflection point the collapse of meaning, when the unconscious begins to demand a new way of living. Most people try to silence this call with more work, more distractions, more speed. But the more you run, the more you feel you're running away from something that insists on following you. A man once told me that he spent 20 years building a company that in everyone's eyes was a success. He had employees, travel, prestige, and what we call stability. One day, sitting in the company's parking lot, he realized he felt nothing. No pride, no joy, He said he looked at the building and thought, I've created something that imprisons me. That night, for the first time in decades, he went home without checking emails. And in the silence of the car, he had the feeling of returning from a place he never wanted to be. This is the kind of revelation that changes the course of a life, not because it destroys what has been built, because it exposes the difference between what is alive and what merely functions. Have you ever stopped to think about how many things in your life, how many relationships, jobs, habits, projects continue out of sheer inertia without any real purpose? Society has become a master at keeping things running, even when they've already died inside. The fear of emptiness is so great that we prefer to carry useless burdens rather than admit that something is coming. Jung said that nothing is transformed before it is accepted. That's why so many people repeat the same cycles, because they use resistance with strength. Resisting keeps you alive, but it doesn't let you. There's a dangerous illusion in the idea of constant productivity. We've been trained to believe that stopping is synonymous with failure. Thinking is a waste of time. That value lies in staying busy. But the human brain wasn't designed to live in permanent acceleration. Studies show that when the mind is subjected to continuous stimuli, it enters a state of saturation called cognitive automatic mode. In this mode, the brain consumes up to 50% more energy just to maintain the appearance of normality. It's the mental equivalent of driving a car with the handbrake on. You keep moving, but the strain is absurd. That's why so many successful professionals get sick when they stop working. Their bodies slow down, but they're missing. They discover that the silence they so desperately avoided is, in fact, the truest mirror of lives. And what the mirror shows is sometimes unbearable. Decisions, routines inherited from others, dreams forgotten along the way. No one teaches them what to do when success ceases to make sense. But there's a curious detail. This collapse of meaning is almost always the prelude to reconstruction. It's as if the unconscious uses exhaustion as a tool for liberation. When the conscious mind insists on controlling everything, the unconscious creates situations that force it to stop. An illness, a job loss, an unexpected loss, events that seem like punishments but are necessary. Jung said that the unlived life is a disease that can kill, And what we call a crisis is often just the body trying to heal the mind that strayed from its path. There are people who, after losing everything, finally begin. One woman told me that the job loss she feared most was the best gift she received. For the first time, she had time to think about what she really wanted. She realized she had spent 15 years working to maintain an image of success that never represented. Today, she earns less, but wakes up feeling lighter. Before, I lived in fear of losing everything, she said. Now I realize that what I lost was what prevented me from being free. Is it really necessary to lose everything or could we learn to change before the collapse? The answer lies in the ability to observe. Observing is not just seeing, perceiving the invisible patterns that shape your routine. How many times do you repeat the same argument, the same type of relationship, the same mistake disguised under another name? The unconscious works like an invisible programmer, creates mental shortcuts, habits, automatic impulses, and while you don't recognize them, they control every decision. Repetition is the language the unconscious uses to get your attention. When something happens many times, not a coincidence, a message, but most prefer to blame chance. They say it's destiny, that it wasn't meant to be, that life is like that. These are elegant ways of avoiding taking responsibility. The unconscious is patient, but relentless. It repeats until you understand. And when you understand, the pattern dissolves as if that is the power to transform the repetitive into the creative. A curious psychological experiment showed that the human brain is unable to differentiate between unconscious repetition and intentional learning. In other words, what you repeat without realizing it becomes part of who you are. Therefore, the first step to changing your life is to observe what you are reading. Every gesture, every thought, every automatic choice reveals the system that dominates you. But there's something even more surprising. When you start to truly observe, you discover that it's not the world that controls you, it's your own mind projecting the world. The environment, the people, the circumstances, everything begins to reflect your internal state. One day, a friend told me, "I've noticed that when I'm calm, even the traffic seems to flow better." He laughed, thinking it was a coincidence, but it wasn't. An organized mind creates coherence. When you change the frequency of your thoughts, the environment responds. It sounds mystical, but it's simply heightened perception. Jung called this synchronicity, the alignment between the internal and external. When the unconscious ceases to be an enemy and becomes a partner, reality reorganizes itself. Coincidences increase, decisions become more intuitive, and results flow with less resistance. Not magic, it's attention. What the world calls luck is simply the natural expression of an awakening. But awakening demands a price, facing the shadow, that part of yourself that you avoid looking at. Fear, laziness, envy, pride, attachment. Everything you condemn in others lives at some level within you. When you deny it, the shadow acts back. When you acknowledge it, it transforms into strength. Jung said that you don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. A man I knew spent his life blaming his father for his lack of opportunities. At 50, he realized he had become exactly like him, a resentful man, always waiting for something external to save him. That's when he understood. What he hated most about his father was what he hadn't yet accepted in himself. This realization freed him, not from the past, but from repetition. Because as long as you blame, you remain trapped in the role of victim. And the victim doesn't create. They only survive. Have you ever wondered who the true author of your story is? It's an uncomfortable question because it forces you to confront how much of you still live under the control of the voice of your parents, of society, of peers. When you unconsciously repeat, the system belongs to them. When you create, the system belongs to you. And this is the most important boundary of all. Either you create your own system or you end up living within someone else's system. This applies to work, to money, to relationships. While some build structures that generate value, others sell time, energy, and presence. First works for the future. The second struggles to survive in the present. But there's a detail that few realize. The system isn't external. It begins in the mind. Your mind is disorganized. Your world will be too. If your thinking is reactive, your life will be chaotic. Integration is uniting what you think, feel, and do. It's aligning purpose and practice. It's transforming every minute of attention into a brick, every idea into a foundation, every decision into a seed. And it is at this point that everything is reversed. What was once effort becomes strategy. What was once repetition becomes rhythm. What was once imprisonment becomes choice. Consciousness is the code that reprograms destiny. When the conscious being becomes the architect of their own mind, time ceases to be an enemy. It becomes a collaborator. Life stops pushing and starts responding. And what once seemed improbable begins to become inevitable. The secret in the end, simple and almost cruel. No one is trapped in someone else's system unless they choose to remain in it. And the day you understand this will be the day the world, for the first time, stops using you, starts serving you. Thinking is an act of courage, and that's precisely why so few truly practice it. Think deeply and honestly is to shed light where there was once shadow, to dismantle certainties, that to admit that perhaps everything you believed about effort, success, and time was incomplete. Jung said that true thought destroys illusions, and perhaps that's why so many people run from it. It's easier to repeat what works for others than to face the responsibility of discovering what truly makes sense for oneself. But the price of escape is high. To live without thinking is to live at the mercy of the unconscious, a prisoner of patterns disguised as destiny. The human mind is a territory full of traps. The more you believe you're in control, the more it silently dominates you. It creates convincing justifications to maintain comfort, disguises the fear of change as prudence, transforms attachment into loyalty, pride into morality. It's a perfect device to keep you the same. But there comes a moment when something inside begins to rebel against stability. It's a kind of internal tension, a nameless discomfort that makes you feel something is out of place, even when everything seems fine. This discomfort is the harbinger of change. It's the unconscious pushing the conscious to evolve. Some ignore this call and harden. These people age prematurely. They become predictable, defensive, closed off. Their gaze loses its sparkle because their minds have stopped growing. Then there are those who listen, those who allow themselves to doubt, question, and deconstruct. At first it hurts. Thinking is like breaking a shell that has protected you for years. But soon after comes the fresh air, the expansion, the relief of discovering that you can change your own way of seeing the world. It is at that moment that consciousness awakens. Why is it that so many fear this awakening? Perhaps because once you see it, there's no way to unsee it. When the mind awakens, the world changes color. The same routines take on new weight. Same people reveal different intentions, and you begin to realize how surrounded you were by actions. Everything that once seemed urgent loses its meaning. And what once seemed a smaller moment of silence, good conversation, a simple gesture, begins to carry immense value. But this awakening comes at a price, because when you become aware, the world tries to pull you back, wants you distracted. Social media wants you trapped. Advertising wants you dissatisfied. The system wants you productive. A distracted mind is a docile mind. Therefore, remaining lucid in a world that profits from your confusion is an act of resistance. Jung said that what we resist persists, and this is the root of much human suffering. We resist silence, fear, but it will reveal. We resist emptiness because we confuse pause. We resist the new because it threatens what we hold. But it is precisely in these spaces, in silence, in emptiness, in uncertainty, that transformation happens. It is there that the mind reorganizes its own energy and creates new connections. Have you ever noticed that the best ideas appear when you're not trying to think? When you're showering, driving, walking, staring into space? That's because in those moments the conscious mind finally shuts up, and the unconscious, the true engineer of reality, can get to work. The problem is that we live in a time when silence is almost a crime. Every second is occupied. And the result is a generation that knows everything about the world but almost just nothing about itself. But what if the power you seek isn't in doing more, but in thinking better? What if the freedom you seek isn't about stopping work, but about starting to work with meaning? That's the game changer. An awakened mind transforms work into a channel. The body continues to execute, but consciousness guides it. What was once a burden becomes purpose. What was once repetition becomes ritual. Imagine two people starting the same day. The first wakes up and dives straight into tasks, answers messages, races against the clock, puts out fires. At the end of the day, they feel like they've lived 10 hours without realizing it. All they've gained is exhaustion. Second wakes up, breathes, reviews what really matters, and chooses the 3 actions that bring them closest to what they want to build. They work less, but produce more. They feel the time passing, but don't waste it. The difference between them is simple. One reacts, the other plans. And here is one of the hardest truths Jung left us. He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens. Dreaming is important, but it is in awakening that life happens. When you live outwardly, your mind is driven by what the world imposes. When you live inwardly, the world begins to respond to your intention. This is psychological alchemy, transforming energy into form, chaos into clarity, effort into value. However, there's something almost no one realizes. The modern world was designed to hijack your attention. Everything, absolutely everything, is made to keep you looking outward. The colors of the screens, the sounds of notifications, the reward cycle that traps you in a feeling of always being almost satisfied. It's an invisible architecture created to fragment focus and prevent deep thought. But thinking is what sets you free. Attention is power. Where you place your focus, there your future is born. An experiment conducted by neuroscientists showed that when a person focuses intensely on something for more than 20 minutes, the brain begins to alter the chemical structure of attention. Connections become more precise, memory improves, and the entire body enters a state of coherence. This is the creative state. It is impossible for those who live in constant distraction. That is why creators, artists, inventors, and visionaries always sought isolation, silence, and ritualistic routine. They were not escaping the world. They were creating the space where the inner world could speak. And what is your mind trying to tell you? Haven't listened to you. What's trapped inside, begging to be formed? Fear, doubt, anger, unexpressed ideas. Everything you avoid looking at transforms into shadow. And while you don't make that shadow conscious, it acts behind your back, sabotaging your plans and draining your energy. But when you have the courage to face it, it transforms into strength. The same fear that paralyzed you, the same pain that weakened you, becomes clarity. That is the power of the awakened mind. It does not run from the shadow. It integrates it. And then there's a moment, almost imperceptible, when everything changes. The noise ceases, the body relaxes, and you feel that time is up. Things flow, opportunities seem to appear, answers arrive effortlessly. Not luck, it's coherence. When the mind organizes itself, the universe cooperates. Jung said that what we call coincidence is merely the meeting of the external and the internal. It's the world responding to your most authentic frequency. But this state is not permanent. It needs to be cultivated. The world will try to pull you back into autopilot every day. That's why thinking needs to become a practice, like a workout, a daily moment of pause, of orientation, of reconnection with purpose. And when this becomes a habit, something extraordinary happens. You not only think clearly, you act with precision. Effort and awareness become allies. The mind, once scattered, becomes a tool. And it is at this point that the impossible begins to move. You begin to realize that time doesn't need to be fought, used. That effort doesn't need to be burdensome, and be productive. That silence is an absence, origin. And when that realization sets in, you understand. The world doesn't change when you fight against it. It changes when you change the way you think. And it is at that moment that true power is revealed. There's a moment in life when the mind awakens, heart understands. Nothing changes from the outside in. What we call luck, destiny, or coincidence is merely a reflection of what we build day after day within ourselves. The mind is the first tool of freedom, but almost no one learns how to use it. We grow up believing that thinking is merely reflecting, when in reality, thinking is creating. It is in thought that the invisible takes shape, that energy transforms into structure, chaos organizes itself into a path. And when you understand this, time ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally. Because a clear mind makes time work in your favor. Carl Jung said that each person's life is a unique experiment of the soul. This means there are no formulas, no shortcuts, no manuals. There is only awareness, and that's why so many people live exhausted lives. They try to apply other people's model to their own lives, without realizing that each mind has its own rhythm and its own map. The secret is not to run faster, but to walk in the right direction. When you understand your rhythm, the rush dissolves. The world may continue in chaos, but within you, an axis is born, a silent center of gravity that keeps you steady amidst it all. Perhaps the most common mistake people make when seeking transformation is believing it begins with grand gestures. But true change rarely makes a lot. It starts small, like a thought repeated consciously, a choice made differently, a moment when you decide to act intentionally. It's a habit, pause, a question. Why am I doing this? Does this bring me closer to or further away from what? These are simple questions, but when asked every day, they reprogram the mind more profoundly than any course or power lies in the everyday. It's in how you start your day, talk to yourself, how you react to what happens. Most people live in reaction mode. Everything is a response to the external world. But when you reverse that and start the day creating instead of reacting, the world changes texture. Suddenly, what once seemed random to follow a pattern. Opportunities become more visible. The right people cross your path, not because the world has changed, but because your perception has expanded. There's a serenity that only appears when you stop fighting against life and start dancing with it. That's not giving up its intelligence. It's realizing that strength lies not in resisting, but in flowing consciously. That discipline isn't rigidity, but consistency. That focus isn't closing your eyes to everything else, but opening your eyes essential. What you nurture grows, and what you ignore dissolves. Jung believed that the purpose of human life is to become who you are. This phrase seems simple, but it contains one of the deepest truths of existence. Becoming who you are doesn't mean superficially being yourself. It means knowing the shadow and the light, understanding what within you is ready and what is still under construction. It's about integrating the unconscious, transforming blind impulses into conscious choices. When you do this, something inside aligns. Work ceases to be merely a means of survival and becomes expression. Money ceases to be an escape and becomes a consequence. Life ceases to be a burden and becomes a project. You don't need a perfect plan to start. You just need to start with intent. Take a piece of paper and write down what in your routine consumes your energy without bringing you closer to any three things. Then look at each one and ask, how can I do this differently? How can I simplify, automate, delegate, or transform it into something that continues to function on its own? This is the basis for building a system. A system is a reflection of an organized mind, a way to transform effort into structure and time into freedom. The same applies to emotions. What thoughts do you nurture every day? What conversations do you mentally repeat? How many fears do you relive without realizing it? The mind creates reality. Everything thought with emotion becomes a seed. Therefore, every conscious thought is an investment, and every automatic thought is a debt. Changing your life is, first and foremost, changing the way you. But this change requires practice. Practice requires consistency. Therefore, what transforms you is not what you do occasionally, it's what you do consistently. The discipline of thinking clearly, of observing yourself, of reorienting yourself, is the true spiritual exercise. When the mind learns to observe itself, it ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a temple. There comes a moment when work ceases to be work and becomes an extension, being. It's when you begin to build something that continues to exist, even when the body rests. Project, a work of art, an idea, a business, system, that is conscious creation. And this creation brings a peace that ordinary effort never brings. The peace of knowing that what you do today will continue to grow tomorrow, even if you're not there to push it forward. The freedom you seek is not in stopping work, but in building something that works for you. And that something begins within the mind. The mind is the original field of all creation. When it is scattered, everything around it fragments. When it is aligned, the world organizes itself. The external is merely a reflection of the internal. The most beautiful thing about this is that this transformation doesn't need to be visible to begin. It happens silently, and silence is the sound of reconstruction. Noise is merely the echo of the old trying to survive. If the world seems confusing, perhaps it's because it's reflecting a mind still in transit. That's okay. Growing hurts, but it's a healing pain. Life will continue to test you. It will put obstacles in your path, delays, silences, doubts. All of this is part of it. Because the universe doesn't reward those who are in a hurry, it rewards those who have purpose. Each challenge is an opportunity to prove to yourself that you are no longer who you were. But now there is clarity, patience, and vision. That time is no longer your enemy, your partner. Ultimately, it all comes down to a choice. Continue selling hours or start building systems. Continue reacting to the world or start creating it. Continue being a cog in the machine or become an architect. Time will pass anyway. The difference is what you leave behind to grow as it goes by. And perhaps that's what Jung meant when he said that whoever looks outside dreams inside. Awakening is beginning to live from the inside out with intention, purpose, with awareness. So, take a deep breath. Look at your life honestly. What still depends solely on your strength that could depend on your mind? What do you do every day that could become autonomous, light, simple? Write, plan, start small, but start. Create something that lives beyond you, something that serves, grows, and prospers. Because in the end, true wealth lies not in what you possess, but in what continues to grow. Stop. It is a clear, free, and awakened mind that is the true factory of prosperity. If this message resonated with you, comment below what within you needs, even anonymously. Share what you're ready to change. This could be the beginning of something bigger. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and send this reflection to someone who is still living on autopilot. Needs to remember that thinking, first act of power. Because what you build consciously never stops working.